Welcome back. You're still watching the Q Breakfast Show. Do not forget to visit our Facebook page, that is QTV Zambia. Let's get interactive this morning on our breakfast show. Do not forget, we're also on Instagram as well as Twitter. Now, the Psa Alliance is a consortium of organizations led by ActionAid International and the Public Service Accountability Monitor of Rhodes University, Eastern and Southern Africa's Small-Scale Farmers Forum, and SAFAID. Now, this consortium implements the Partnership for Social Accountability, innovative projects in the health and agriculture sector in Southern Africa, with support from Swiss Agency for Development and Cooperation. Through this project, the Psa Alliance works to improve social accountability and gender responsiveness in public resource management in health and agricultural services across 5 countries: Malawi, Mozambique, Tanzania, Zambia, and of course Zimbabwe as well, contributing to the realization of the SADC commitments on HIV, sexual and reproductive health and rights, and of course food security in Southern African region. Now, ActionAid Zambia has been implementing this project in Zambia since 2016, which is now in its second phase. To help us discuss this topical issue, I am joined by Parliamentary Committee on Agriculture Chairperson, who is also Kaputa Member of Parliament, Honorable Psa Ng'onga, and of course he will be talking about some of these issues and so much more. Good morning and welcome to our breakfast show.
Thank you very much, Rhoda. Good morning. And good morning.
It's great to have you. I see you're taking precaution.
Yes, thank you very much. This is a time when everybody must take precautions, and the President, Minister of Health, and the Cabinet team have all given us information that we must all follow. You know what the Minister of Health are telling us about COVID-19 and the measures that we must take as Zambians. It's very, very important.
Absolutely.
Not to underplay this virus.
Definitely. Now, to begin with, Honorable, briefly explain to us the role of the Parliamentary Committee, particularly Agriculture Committee, which you chair in this project.
Thank you very much for that question. The role of the Parliamentary Committee, more especially Parliamentary Committee on Agriculture, one of the most important functions is that it's an oversight committee that oversees the Minister of Agriculture and their spending departments, the Minister of Lands and Natural Resources, and also the Minister of Fisheries and Livestock. So basically what this function does is that you need to see exactly how these government ministries are implementing the policies and the programs that they have in order to benefit the people that derive benefits from these ministries. Yeah. Other than that, we are also entrusted with the responsibility to scrutinize any bills that come out of these ministries into Parliament before they are enacted into law. So they are passed on to our committee to be able to check them, and after that, then we could be able to say yes, they are in line with the requirements of the agricultural sector. Other than that, we also have a provision to look at the budget. As the budget comes to the House, there are certain expenditures that we are in support as a committee, and if we are not in support, we would then be able to ask or request our colleagues within the spending ministries afterwards to explain to us how those lines will be able to benefit the people. So these are basically some of the functions. I think to sum it all is an accountability committee to ensure that we make those departments that spend the money to be accountable to the people. And this is in line with ActionAid and their consortium program on social accountability.
Okay, amazing. Now, how are you as a committee ensuring that you hold government socially accountable, especially during this time of the COVID-19 pandemic, in line with the SDC Phase 2 project?
This particular point in time, what would be very difficult for the committee for now is the fact that we are also we are the giant Sendai. So if we were in the House, we would have definitely composed ourselves as a committee to look at subjects or topical issues that then informs us on how, as the agricultural sector, we would be faring towards the COVID-19. However, even where we are, because a number of us within the agricultural sector are experts, a number of the committee members. So even wherever my members are, and if they are definitely listening, it is incumbent upon us, because we're still representatives of the people in our constituencies. Let's take up that role and ensure that even as government spends money in the health sector to protect all of us, we also see what the impact is on the agricultural sector, especially on our small-scale farmers, because a number of our rural farmers, people are small-scale farmers.
Yes.
We need to ensure that the resources that are coming there, though they are targeted at COVID-19, but we must also ensure that, you know, part of the methods and measures that are doing are able to ensure that our people are able to produce, they are able to make sure that we find food finds itself to the commercial sectors or to areas where people are able to consume it.
Now, there is also a danger with the current partial lockdown of the country that, you know, fresh produce for particularly small-scale farmers could be going to waste, you know, as a result of measures put in place to prevent the coronavirus, the spread of the coronavirus. How can small-scale farmers be cautioned from the ripple effects of this pandemic?
In actual fact, what you're saying is extremely true. Taking, for example, the major urban centers, this would be Lusaka, probably the Copper Belt, and parts of the towns along the Rhine of Rail, where, you know, the message on the COVID-19 is very clear. People must, if anything, must stay indoor. While a farmer must definitely be in the field. That's the major role of a farmer. If you stay indoor and you are not on the field, then it means that you are not going to produce. So we've actually seen that a number of produce, especially tomato, which has no long shelf life. You know, if it is moved out of Mukushi into Soweto and it doesn't finish because of the, you know, people, those that are buying are getting less and less, you know, we find that this tomato is actually going to rot. And this is where now, again, even as farmers, we need to ensure that, you know, you do not harvest all of it at the same time. And if you do, you ensure that it is probably spread instead of going only to Soweto. Ensure that it goes to other small markets as well, while protecting yourself. Because the perishable produce cannot be kept for a day or two without getting to the market. So we are grateful that the president has not totally 100% imposed, you know, a total lockout or lock in. You know, because that will mean that whatever crop is in the field will then get to waste. So people are able to maneuver here and there to ensure that they sell their produce. But it is definitely affecting both our production and also our marketing. At the end of it all, this lockdown will definitely affect the incomes that the small-scale farmers are able to generate. We are hoping going forward that the government will find, you know, a package. You know, we have heard from the Minister of Finance announcing that there is, you know, some financial assistance through the banks, where everybody would be allowed to see how they can access that fund so that they are able to increase their production. And I think the agricultural sector should also take a major role to ensure that they get some additional financing, because everybody is affected, including the agricultural sector.
Definitely. And also, just speaking about the main focus right now being on the COVID-19, and earlier on I was speaking to the Public Health Association of Zambia. They did mention that most of the activities, you know, in hospitals have come to a standstill, because now the focus is on, you know, what are we going to do with the COVID-19? Young people cannot access SRH services anymore because now we are dealing with this pandemic. But also, speaking about the budget, with the, you know, pandemic of this magnitude, there could be a temptation that government might move the budgetary allocations maybe to, you know, the COVID-19, focusing on the COVID-19. What are you doing to ensure that, you know, the focus does not completely move, you know, from the agriculture sector?
As at the moment, you know, I mean, it's not only a preposition that you're making. It's probably the reality of the life that we are living now. You know, everybody, including government's focus, is how to protect people from this focus 19. Again, it's one of the major priorities of every government to protect your people, from whatever, circumstance that you are in.
Exactly.
And therefore, from the budget point of view, we also foresee that there would be expenditure lines, that probably would be halted slightly in order to try and facilitate finances that should go to the major lines, to the major protection, programs in the COVID-19, because the whole country, mind you, needs to be sensitized.
Yes.
The whole country must be protected. It's not only Lusaka or the major areas. So going forward, what we basically, and I'm very, very grateful because yesterday and the other day, I heard the Minister of Agriculture, Honorable Katambo, assuring us that even if COVID-19 is here with us, our fertilizer inputs are also arriving in the country. This, I think, is the best decision that His Excellency the President and his team in the agricultural sector did to ensure that they plan far ahead. You could imagine, because even in countries where we get these particular resources are in a lock-in or lockdown, circumstances, and therefore they may not be able to produce, they may not even be able to ship these fertilizer inputs to all of us. But here we have received these fertilizers in good time. It may not be all sufficiently in, but this is a very, very good plan. And this is what we are actually encouraging, that whatever materials that must be able to come and prepare for the coming season must be in, so that the farmers are only helped with the resources to ensure that there is access so that we can produce going forward. For us in the agriculture sector, I think we are getting a very positive vibe from the Minister of Agriculture that yes, the disease is here, but they are planned ahead of the disease, and therefore the agriculture sector will not suffer the consequence that it should have suffered.
Absolutely. Now, also, not forgetting to mention that resource allocation to the agriculture sector has been reducing, over the years. Take, for instance, the financial year of 2020. The agriculture budget has declined by 25%, mainly due to, among other reasons, lack of commitment from the government. The increasing debt burden, which is squeezing public spending. Just what does this decrease mean and its related impact on food security?
Basically, the decrease in the agricultural sector budget significantly means that we are not investing as much as we should be investing. In actual fact, within the agricultural sector, there is a Cardiff framework which actually requests all governments in Africa to invest at least 10% of their budget into the agricultural sector. So that reduction you see actually means that we are not investing in the prime movers of the agriculture sector. One, it will definitely affect our food security as a nation. It also affects our job creation, because the agricultural sector contributes much more to the job creation of this country. It basically means that we cannot be able to grow this economy at a rate that we want to grow, because the agricultural sector contributes to the national GDP. And therefore, for us, especially in the committee, we've always, discussed and talked with our colleagues in the ministry to ensure that the Minister of Finance puts a priority to the agricultural sector. If you look at where we're coming from and where we are, everybody knows that it is the agricultural sector that will move this country. Copper and the minerals have done their part from the previous years where we are going. Copper is a wasting asset. Now the prices in the international market will even crumble much more because of the COVID-19. But if we are able to invest in the agricultural sector, this will have a ripple effect where the agricultural sector will then now start moving our economic development going forward, and therefore reducing the budgets like we have seen in the 2020 budget because of other circumstances, like you talked about the debt burden that we are grappling with. We can only spend so much that what we have. We can't spend beyond what we don't have. But we're basically saying even from what we have, we must prioritize the agricultural sector, just like we have pronounced always that the agricultural sector will be the driving engine for our economy, and therefore we must put money where our mouths are. And if you're looking at the number of people that benefit from the agricultural sector, we basically talk in excess of 70% of our Zambians derive directly or indirectly their livelihood from the agricultural sector. So putting money there in fact, you're basically killing many birds with one stone. Yeah, so basically that's our thrive, and our wish is that we must put resources to the agricultural sector. Seeing a reduction in the budget allocation doesn't give us, a positive move towards increasing the agricultural budget contribution to the national economy.
Now also please explain the impact of poor funding towards extension services, given the impact of climate change on agriculture.
Again, this is the consequences of the overall total budget reduction. If the overall total budget reduction, to the agriculture sector is seen, one of the consequences is the poor funding to the extension working. Most of our rural community farmers who are rural farmers, they need information, and they need information which is modern, which is current, which can help them produce more. We can only do that if we are financing the extension sector, well. And where we do not have a vibrant extension sector, it means that our farmers are still using technologies of the 1900s when we are in the 21st century. And that technology may not cope with what we are looking now. With the COVID-19 again being a major threat now, it even becomes worse because, nobody will be able to move to a farmer to go and teach them. The urban sectors are now, in the IT. For people in the banking sector, they are saying reduce coming to the banks. Just use your mobile apps, in order to deposit, to access. That's the sort of information we need to get to the farmer. But we can only get that if we have invested in the extension, in the e-extension service programs. For now, as we speak, because there was reduced budget, it means that that particular technology cannot be salvaged by a farmer, and therefore a farmer will be worse off than he would otherwise be. So basically, putting money in the agriculture sector will also improve the extension services that we need for the farmer to be able to grasp in order for him to produce more than he is producing now.
Absolutely. And Honorable, how important is accountability of public resources given the current situation where food is now, critical for people?
You cannot overemphasize the need for accountability everywhere. In actual fact, and we applaud, Action Aid and their consortiums for having, looked at this social accountability as a program, both for agriculture and for the health sector. Is critically very important. For every resource that is made available in the agriculture sector and the other sectors must be accounted for. And social accountability is very, very important. It has got sequences on how to ensure that those that are entrusted with resources are made to account. But it's extremely important because if you are not accountable, you will invest, even the meager resources that comes to the agricultural sector will be misdirected. For example, I know Zambians would want to hear that, the farmer input support program is flourishing. They want to see that food reserve agencies allocated a lot of money for them to be able to buy the crop. But unfortunately for people that come from the agricultural sector, these two programs, the farmer input support program, food reserve agency, are not key drivers of our agricultural sector. You can put in money there, but there's very little that comes out because of poor targeting, because of other dubious businessmen that see that government is just a conduit, for them to siphon money and take into other programs. So basically what the agricultural committee and those that are there are saying that, if we are accountable, then we must allocate these resources to areas like research and development, because it is empirical figures. Research has actually shown that money invested in research is 12 times the return that you get, as compared to what the money you invest in the food reserve agency or the money you invest in the farmer input support program. Extension service, training of the farmers. So these are key areas, where irrigation and development. So these are key areas where money must be invested. But this again comes around if there was accountability. And therefore we are saying those that are entrusted with the investing or using government resources must ensure that they comply with the accountability programs and procedures so that every ngwe that is spent to the agricultural sector is able to see the results that come out of it. We cannot overemphasize the need to be accountable. It's extremely important.
Now also, seeing that the Farmer Input Support Program and the e-voucher system has continued to be marred with abuse and also ghost beneficiaries, we can call them. What are you doing as a Committee on Agriculture to help ensure that FISP is efficient and achieves its objectives?
We have had quite a number of studies. I'm privileged to have served as the chairman for the Committee on Agriculture for the last 4 years, but I also served in the previous sitting as a chairperson, and we've had quite a number of studies as a committee to just look at the Farmer Input Support Program, allocation through the e-voucher system, and also what you can call the direct input input supply. And we, from the stakeholders and from ourselves and from the ministry, we are all convinced that one, the e-voucher system is even now stands and would be the best system to ensure that farmers access their inputs. One, it does give them a choice of what inputs a farmer will be able to access from the subsidy that they get from government. Two, it also targets. You don't have groups of farmers or cooperatives that go to government and say, we want to pick on behalf of our members. Each one is registered, each one has got his details, and the person that benefits would definitely be a person that should have actually been targeted to benefit from that system. The other way is that it removes government from spending unnecessary money on things that can be done by the private sector. For example, transporting fertilizer from Lusaka to Kaputa, that should not be government's job. That should be done by private sector, because the private sector is interested in making money in Kaputa. So you will transport that fertilizer to Kaputa or to Chama or to Shangombo. But in the direct input supply, the government has to ensure that they transport the fertilizer, they pay the loaders, and they pay everybody. They even pay for the warehouse when the fertilizer arrives there. So this e-voucher system removes the government. In actual fact, the saving that has been recorded in the years that the e-voucher has been implemented from the government point of view is huge. Even the cost farmers we're talking about are removed because each person who is actually enlisted gets a card, and therefore you don't get these unknown people going to access the inputs. So literally going forward, even as a way of accountability, I think we need to emphasize on a system like the e-voucher system, except that as any system made by people will have flaws, will have weaknesses, but we can only deal with those weaknesses if we are willing to face them. Example we have is the COVID-19. If we were not, as a people, resolved to deal with it using any particular means, I think by now would have been devastated, But here is the focus, and people are saying, yes, it has come as a menace, it has disturbed us, but we are a people, we are going to conquer it until we resolve, until we have a life that we have been used to living. So this is the same thing with the Farmer Input Support Program, especially supporting the e-voucher. Challenges are there. One cannot say there are no challenges. They are there. But those challenges are resolvable. And once they are resolved, government will be the winner because they will be spending money to where the money is supposed to be spent. Removing these, ghost farmers, dubious businessmen that only come up with companies because there's money in the government to go and access. So where I'm standing from, and as a committee, we have actually indicated that we would rather support the e-voucher system because we know it has a future, and we know that that's the way that we will be able to provide the literal subsidy to the farmers in a targeted way, as opposed to saying we'll give free fertilizer to everybody. Because even as we are saying, we are supporting 1 million farmers, but we've over 5 million farmers that are not being supported out there. But we're supporting only 1 million. So we must be able to target and ensure that we use a system that will identify which of these farmers must receive these inputs. Not everybody, and not those that are working, and not everybody within the urban centers. Let's direct this to the rural communities where those that need to be assisted must be assisted by the government subsidy.
Definitely. Now, lack of participation of small-scale farmers in the planning and budget process, in order for their needs to be prioritized, still remains a big challenge now. Coupled with the lack of planning and budget bill as participation of the stakeholders in the planning and budgeting process is at the will of those with power. What is your comment on this?
I think this particular issue, we thank God that we've been evolving, and the current leadership through His Excellency the President, Dr. Edgar Chagwalungu, and also the Minister of Agriculture, we know and we've seen that this bill, the budget and planning bill, was tabled in Parliament before we adjourned the same day, and we are hoping that all being equal, that this bill will become law, and therefore it will allow, even the participation of Parliament in the planning process before the budget comes, just for enactment, for a lack of a better term, just for approval, but will be involved in the planning. Unfortunately, again, at a lower level, even within the agricultural sector, sometimes as people, we do not just want to be involved, because I know the Minister of Finance announces the budget process much earlier, and it tells different groupings or different sectors of the economy to be involved. At a lower level there, it's like an issue doesn't exist. We're basically just waiting for them to give us the actual result after the budget has been made. Sometimes, yes, you can blame the government for not having been forceful, but the information is out there. So what we're basically saying as people's representatives is that give us, an opportunity for us as members of Parliament to be involved in the budget planning process. Because what we're only involved in is the approval, which is the end of the product. And at that end, when you're approving, your hands are tight, because you can change literally, very literal, that you can actually make changes to. The figures are already determined, the lines of expenditure are already determined, you can't change anything. But once we are involved in the planning process, even especially as committees, like I'm talking, we'll be able as a committee to say, this sort of money cannot go to this line alone, or this line alone. We need this, that. And once we agree, then we take it to Parliament